My name is Matt Allred, and I'm from J-Bones Clothing, and this is I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
I want to welcome you guys out today to episode 130 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name is Chris Hollifield. I am your host. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast all about Salt Lake City. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much for checking it out. However you found the podcast, thank you so much. IamSaltLake.com is the website for the podcast. You can find out more about me, find out more about the show. You can also go through the back catalog and listen to all the conversations with the people here in Salt Lake City that are doing some really cool stuff. I got a great episode for you guys today. Nick Passey joins me on this episode. Nick Passey is the guitarist for Folk Hogan. He came over to my downtown apartment. We chat. We do some catching up. Folk Hogan was on episode 25. So it's been a while since Nick was on the podcast. We do some catching up from that episode. We find out what else Nick has been up to, kind of some of his musical history. Great guy, great band. Was really stoked to have him on this episode. But before I jump into that conversation, I want to give some love to our sponsors, our friends over at the Urban Lounge. You can find their website at theurbanloungeslc.com. Find a complete list of all of the bands that are going to be coming through Salt Lake City. You're going to want to check out their website, follow them on Twitter and Facebook, and give them some love. Again, the website, theurbanloungeslc.com. Also want to thank Peach Treats, our friend Tiff, over at Peach Treats for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. You can find her Etsy shop at peachtreats.etsy.com. Custom ear art. If you have gauged ears, she also makes fakers. She does great custom orders. Check out her shop, peachtreats.etsy.com. Give them some love. Thank you so much, Peach Treats and the Urban Lounge, for sponsoring this episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. So with all that being said, why don't you guys join me now as I chat with Nick Passey as he came over to my apartment here in beautiful downtown Salt Lake City. So, Nick, I have you here. Folk Hogan was on the podcast. What was it, episode 25?
Yeah.
And I had Moses on the podcast, episode, I believe it was like 78-ish, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
We sat down, we chatted in his store, and now I have the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better and kind of delve into a little bit behind the scenes. People see you playing in Folk Hogan, but they probably don't know too much about you, what your history is, where you came from. So that's what I'm hoping to kind of find out, if that's cool with you, and get to know you a little bit better. And so where were you born? I mean, were you born here in Utah? Or let's start at the beginning of where you were born, and
when I was just an egg.
When you were just an egg
in the chicken, so to speak. So I was born in Provo, Utah.
Okay.
So I am
Happy Valley.
I am a Utah County Happy Valley folk, so to speak. And I grew up down there, and I found myself just spending more and more time up in Salt Lake, developing more relationships up here, and just having this eating desire to just be up here. And I eventually moved up to Salt Lake. And
now, what year were you born, if you don't mind me asking?
86.
86. I was just kind of curious, because Utah County is old stomping grounds, but we probably crossed paths down there at some point.
Definitely.
But it's the same thing. It was just like there's nothing going on down there at the time. Now the music scene is incredible in Utah County.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know what your opinion on the music scene is.
It's changed, the whole music scene has changed a lot, but there's more things happening and things happening in a different direction. I mean,
here in Salt Lake.
Yeah. And Utah County has, Provo has a very specific music scene, and it's always been really fun to go to shows down there, and it ebbs and it flows. I mean, there was times where, 10 years ago, every corner of the block, in Center Street in Provo had a music venue, and that's what you'd do. You'd go pay $5 and watch one band here, and you'd walk down the street and pay $5 and watch that band play. And, sometimes you hit 3 shows in a night.
Now, did you play in any bands down in Provo, or what was the very
absolutely.
What was the first band you were ever in?
The very first band I was ever in was in junior high, but I've been in too many bands to count. And
well, you obviously remember your first band.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the first. Well, actually, let's back up just a little bit. What was the very first instrument that you even played?
I was a vocalist, and I wanted to start a band. I got that, I got to start a band. That's what I got to do. And
how old were you?
14.
14 years old. You wanted to sing in a band.
Yes, I wanted to sing. And so I started putting it together, and I'm like, okay, I got a drummer, check. Friend owns drum set, therefore is drummer. I got a bass player, and our other friend was going to be the guitarist. And
what kind of music were you listening to at 14 years old?
Like radio. You're
top
listening
40
to
stuff.
top 40
and so that's the kind of band you wanted
radio.
to make. Was that the kind of band you wanted to make, like a top 40 band?
Probably just play covers.
Cover songs.
It didn't matter. I mean, it was
you just wanted to make music.
And it's kind of amazing to look back at that age, because everything is so significant. The music that we were listening to was probably crap, but it meant something to us still. And it was kind of this age right in between where I was kind of going from listening to just the radio to starting to own my own CDs. And I always
kind of get your own taste a little bit, your own personality, and what kind of music.
And I always I always stole my older brother's cassette tapes and CDs and stuff, but to actually go out and have my own money at 14 and be able to purchase my own, It was a liberating thing. It was this is mine. And you were probably making mixtapes for friends. No one can take this Spice Girls album away from me.
Oh, please don't tell me you bought a Spice Girls album. Come on, Nick.
No, it was just a single. But,
it was just a single.
So, I couldn't afford the whole album.
Do you remember cassette singles, though? I mean, those, the little cardboard cases, and you'd buy them for $1.99, and they would be one song on one side and another on another, and put them in your Walkman and memorize it.
Seriously. So there was this, I grew up in a musical family. My grandparents were music instructors, both of them. One taught for the junior high, and one taught private lessons at home. One was a vocal teacher, and the other was a orchestra and band teacher. And previous to that, their parents were musically involved, and my great grandfather played banjo in a traveling hobo-y kind of band at that time, a dance band. I mean, and
you probably didn't know him at all.
I didn't really ever know him, and he was passed away before I was really around.
But was there a lot of that kind of music played in your house? Or, in Utah County, okay?
No.
I grew up listening to a lot of church music.
Yeah.
That was what was playing in my house.
Yeah. And so it was kind of we used to do that and we don't anymore. And, my parents had much different standards than my grandparents and their parents did. They were Mormon. I'm not. But I did grow up in the Mormon church.
As all typical Utahns really have roots in that.
Right.
It's kind of hard to deny it.
It's really hard to deny. And you try to fight it. You go out of state and people are like, oh, you're from Utah. You're Mormon. Well, no, not really. Well, were you baptized? They're like, okay, you win. You won this round, in the same way that, somebody can be Catholic and
you baptized as a child,
not ever gone to, church in the last 20 years. So I guess I would be a Jack Mormon at this point.
You're a Jack. When's the last time you went to church? 20 years ago, you were saying? Not that long ago.
No, not that long ago. It's been a decade.
Okay. So a little while. So at 14 years old, you were a vocalist. You wanted to start this band up. Did the band ever start?
Well, that was the deal, is that the guitarist didn't own a guitar. He was just our friend, out of our 5 friends or 4 friends, he was the one that was going to be the guitarist. And
didn't even know how to play the guitar.
Well, none of us did. I knew how to sing, but we didn't know the instruments. And
now, did you take vocal lessons then?
Yeah, because like from my own mother, my mom was a vocal teacher.
So she taught you how to sing.
Yeah.
So she told you, hey, Nick, you know how to sing.
Yeah.
Like every mother tells their child they know how to sing, even though they probably don't know how to sing.
Yeah. But I actually
could sing.
I had a cassette tape that I would practice for 30 minutes every day, and I was in choirs and so, but getting back to our friend, he never bought the guitar. He never got around to it. And this is what started this whole cycle of my life and being in bands where I was just like, okay, that's got to get done. I'm the guy to get that done. So I went and bought a guitar and I started playing it.
And how old were you when you got a guitar finally?
14.
14 years old.
Yeah. I mean, this was in the span of like a few months, and we started jamming together. And what's cool about that is that, out of the three of us, we all still play music.
You're pretty good friends still with everybody?
Yeah, I mean, I see Jordan, my drummer, all the time because he's in a bunch of bands around Salt Lake, and I haven't seen my original bass player Ben for a long time, but you know, he still plays. He's still doing stuff with music, and so that's kind of cool, at least. But yeah, I mean, played in a ton of bands, and you know, we played like the school assemblies, and you know, the kind of gigs that we got were like
backyard parties,
and it was the world to us. And like, you know, we would practice for months in between playing, you know, and the opportunity was just so rare. And when you're not even old enough to drive, it's really hard to, you know, load a van full of gear and go somewhere. I mean, it's like, mom.
And
I need a ride.
Was your mom pretty supportive of you playing music? Even though it probably wasn't the music she had in mind.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really until I probably hit like the beginning of high school where there was a huge rift between like where I started finding stuff that I was a little bit more heavy and a little bit more punk and you know, a lot more
like what? Give me an example of what you were. I'm always curious here. I mean, come on, let's embarrass you.
It is embarrassing. I mean, like
Blink 182, or was it like really bad Nickelback?
They were definitely around and on the radio at that time, and there wasn't a lot of Nickelback yet. They were, you know, still in Canada somewhere doing something.
Hiding out.
No, I was listening to like NoFX and like punk samplers. I was listening to
those old Fat Record samplers. You would get them for like $2 and then, you know, 20 songs on them.
You'd go to the CD store and you'd like load up like 10 of these like punk samplers and you go through them and there'd be like 2 or 3 bands that you really connected with, and like there'd be like 20 that you maybe enjoy.
Because that's how you found out about music. There wasn't the internet. The internet might have been around. I don't know in that time, but there wasn't like now you can go on Bandcamp and you can go on Facebook and
I mean, it was definitely
Spotify.
around, but it was like if you wanted to listen to an MP3, you spent 2 days on the dial-up internet downloading it. You know, and then like,
don't pick up the phone. You'll lose the connection of the internet.
You know, and the stuff that was available was pretty much the radio only anyways. So
what was the first band that's worth mentioning that you were in that was, cause you know, I know you've been in a few, you know, that kind of, maybe,
I think the one that still gets brought up is I was in a band called Die Panda Die. And
how long ago was that? From 2014 to like what year was that? Like how many years ago are we
I think
talking?
It was 2002 or 2003.
Okay, so like right during the Olympics right here in Salt Lake City was going on.
Yeah, I mean, things were changing around, you know, obviously.
And were you playing were you still living in Utah County at this time?
Yeah, still living down in Utah County.
And everybody from Die Panda Die was in Utah County, or were there Salt Lake City?
They were all, everybody was down there. And I really didn't start playing music up in Salt Lake until I was 21.
Okay.
Because there was decent all ages venues down there, you know, and it didn't make a lot of practical sense when we were in high school to like drive an hour, you know, cause that put us to the point where we're out past when we could be out. And like, you know, it's just,
Does Utah have a curfew of like how late young people can be? Because I remember when I was living out east, when you were like 16 years old, you couldn't be out past 11 or some obscure time like that. I don't know if Utah has.
I remember hearing about that law a lot, and I don't think it was really ever enforced. I don't remember anybody ever getting a ticket
you
or
get
anything.
pulled over. How old are you, son?
Yeah, just
are you drinking caffeine tonight?
right. The things that it was mostly like, we're still all of us still living at home. Even when Die Panda Die was like getting going, we were just like fresh out of high school, but one of our members was still like a senior, and he was going to Orem High. And so like the limitation was still, we're still living at home. And we still had to listen to our parents, They still paid the bills. They paid the rent. We still had to...
They were buying your musical equipment.
Yeah, we still had to not be grounded in order to make it to the gig.
Did you get in trouble a lot as a kid, Nick?
No, I was really good at getting away with everything bad that I did. And...
Do you ever look back, like I look back now, and I look back at the stuff I did, and I wonder, did my mom know about that stuff that I did? You know what I mean? Like sometimes I want to ask her, I go, Mom, did you know what I was, doing?
Yeah.
And you didn't but I don't want to break her heart. But I also don't want to know if she knows the truth.
Yeah.
I
don't think I was doing anything abnormal.
That any, teenage boy would do.
I've always been this weird. So I've never really been like inclined to do drugs, and,
Did you ever get like arrested or anything like that? Underage, under 18?
No, I really didn't ever get brought home by the cops or anything. I was playing music, and, I had a beer or two here or there, but that was about it. I never got in trouble. I was still smart. I didn't.
You were a pretty sly guy.
Actually, I got pulled over a lot. I had a speeding problem. I would drive my car too fast, and I got to the point where I was going to lose my license if I got another ticket.
And how old were you?
17.
And you were going to lose your license?
I was going to lose my license because I had just gotten too many speeding tickets. I kind of had that lead foot. And so I figured it was probably time to get a scooter. Something that wasn't capable of going fast.
Faster than 40 miles an hour.
I don't know why I thought that was a solution. I probably could have just driven less fast, but the timing was right. And so I got this little mid-80s Honda Elite, and it did like 35 downhill with the wind blowing, and it was really wimpy.
But you probably thought you were pretty badass driving it around.
But yeah, it was fun. It was really nimble. It was like scary, and on my little tiny scooter, and so that definitely became an interest that way.
So moving forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Moving forward, Folk Hogan. You're the guitarist for Folk Hogan.
Yes.
Have you played any other instruments in Folk Hogan at all, or has it all just been strictly guitar?
Yeah, so I only play guitar. That's it. I've only played guitar in Folk Hogan, and I don't sing. I sing a little bit of backup.
In Folk Hogan.
Yeah. And that's, I sang in a lot of bands, and so it's kind of weird for some of the people that have known me for a long time. They're like, "Oh, so you sing for that band then?" And I'm like, "No." But I was finishing up school, and I got this call from the old banjo player, Tanner. He said, "How do you feel about coming and trying out for this band that I'm starting?" And I said, "Well, I'm really busy right now, but I don't know. It sounds kind of fun. I'll whatever." He's like, "Okay, well, we're actually getting together right now. So here's the address, And
was this in Salt Lake?
Yeah.
They were getting together, and you were living in Utah County still.
So I bounced around for a couple of years. I couldn't decide. I went from like Utah County up to like almost Salt Lake, where it's like Murray.
But you would keep going back to Utah County?
And then I go back down to Utah County.
Oh, man, once you move out of there.
And then, yeah. But the problem was I had a job down in Utah County, and that's what brought me back down there every single day. And so when that went away and the timing was a little bit better, I finally got back up here a little bit more permanently.
So they're saying, come try out for this band.
Yeah, come try out for this band. Well, what is it? should I bring an acoustic guitar? Should I bring an electric guitar? Like, what's the sound like? Well, I play banjo in it, and we've got an accordion player and a mandolin. And
you're like, that sounds pretty cool.
That sounds kind of weird. All right. Well, and he didn't really give me an idea. So I grabbed the acoustic guitar, I grabbed the electric guitar, and I grabbed a bottle of wine, and I headed down to Salt Lake. And, we hung out for the whole night, and
like at a practice space or somebody's apartment?
In somebody's apartment, in like a spare bedroom, just really small space,
And you only knew Tanner. You didn't know anybody else.
But I had met Canyon.
Okay.
I guess I did know Canyon. So
well, it's Salt Lake. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah. We're all, one giant happy family up here. And so I just started jamming along with them, and I learned like 3 of the songs that night. And
so was the name even established yet at this point? Folk Hogan? Okay.
Yes,
so
but they didn't tell me until like the second or third practice. And I was like, what? Really? That seems kind of weird. That's kind of silly, but
did they play? Were they playing shows yet? Or I'm trying to figure out how early of a stage was Folk Hogan.
They had played like 1 or 2 shows, but it was Moses and it was Canyon and it was their old guitarist, and that was it. There was no drummer.
And how many years ago was this? I'm just like when was Folk Hogan? And we probably talked about this in episode 25 and all that stuff, but
I know, right?
No, it's fine if you don't even know.
I'm losing my brain today. I'm sorry. I'm really, really bad with numbers.
No, and that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I'm the same.
2010.
And I'm the same way. When I was interviewed, I was, it was like, gosh, I have to keep coming up with these numbers. It's like I have a hard time remembering where I live. It's like my address.
Well, they I think they started playing around a little bit in 2009, late 2009, and I actually joined the band. This was kind of at the beginning or the middle of 2011.
And were you playing in any other bands too, or
No, I had stopped playing guitar for a couple of years and gone to school, and I wasn't really even jamming.
Were you burned out of music, or you just wanted to focus on school?
I was just focused on. I was going to school full time and working full time.
And that'll kill you.
And
man.
so I would get up at about 7 a.m, and I would drive from Murray down to Utah County, and I would work an 8-hour day, and then I would drive up, and I would make it just in time to go to class at night. And I would get home from class at about 10:30, and I would stay up till 1 or 2 and do my homework. And that was my my regular schedgle.
What did you go to school for?
Respiratory therapy.
And wow, that's an interesting.
Yeah, and so I'm all over the place. I've got stuff in music and interests in
respiratory
therapy. But that just didn't end up being what I do at all. I'm a graphic designer now. And that's what I initially went to school for. And I just thought, well, this is kind of dumb. I don't really want to go to school for this.
Oh, you originally went to school for a graphic design degree.
And I just got burnt out on it.
Yeah.
And I switched, and it was really interesting schooling. But when it came right down to it, I just didn't really want to work in that field.
Like, what would you do as a respiratory therapist? What would be a job that somebody would get?
Manage people on ventilators and oxygen and give them drugs, and it would be kind of a nursing level job.
So maybe somebody who smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day and they needed to wear an oxygen mask, you would hang out with them and manage.
Yeah, or if you got in a car accident and your lungs stopped working for a couple of days and your body just needed a little bit of extra time to recoup from the shock until you started breathing on your own again, or whatever. I mean, people that went into asthma attacks is a huge thing. I mean, smokers are a huge thing. So, long-term, short-term, anything, if you don't know what a respiratory therapist does, stop breathing and you'll find out. So anything.
Well, for the sake of keeping the podcast going, I won't stop breathing.
Please don't.
So I can find out what you would do to me.
And so that was what I went to school for, and I just became disinterested in it, and
which happens to most people when they go to school. Right? I find,
but it's when you're on a path, everything it seems so definite.
Oh, absolutely. Your whole life, and you change that one thing, and it just disrupts that whole path.
What people exclude is in their plans is chance, or what can change down the road. And it's really, you can't really plan for that.
So what got you interested to go back into graphic design then? Was it a job offer or was it just?
Yeah, it was a job offer.
Yeah.
I just been kind of re-obsessed with it and spending more and more time playing around in Photoshop and working on my own band's website and, making pinback button designs. And I started doing freelance stuff on the side and when it was time for a job change, that was the first thing that, within 45 minutes of getting fired from my old job, that was the first call, Just like I knew somebody that was looking for a graphic designer and they're like, sure.
They saw your portfolio.
Can you come in tomorrow?
You're like, hell yeah.
I'm like, all right. So
you went in.
Yeah, I went in and just started working.
So now with graphic design, do you do all the designing like then with Folk Hogan? No. You don't even do all the designing?
I do a small portion of it because there's so many other talents that we have. When you're in a band, you just meet all these good graphic designers. You meet people that can do all sorts of other creative things and
outside of the band.
It's so much fun to have somebody else do a poster or a t-shirt design. I do a share of it, a share of it. I design a t-shirt every other time or a poster here or there, but
do you still do a lot of freelance stuff then?
Not with how busy I am at work, but I still have clients that when they do come back and need something, I follow.
Well, I was just thinking like if, say somebody's listening, say somebody's in a band, say somebody's got a shop and they need some graphics made up, maybe hit you up or something.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? I'm always looking, I was always looking for interesting opportunities. But, the best way to get a hold of me is just Nick at Folk Hogan. That's the main email address right now.
And I'll put all the links on the show notes for this as well, so people can reach out to you. Now, I wanted to touch base too. Are you still making the buttons? You were, cause I know you hit me up to make some I Am Salt Lake, which I still need to do. I still need to do it. I need to do it,
Yeah.
They're so fun. They're so fun.
They're
those little, have you made quite a few buttons for people or is it just kind of one of those thousands of buttons?
Thousands of buttons. I have the button making machines are all metal and they're made to last for a very long time, with the proper maintenance and everything. But I have, for instance, on the small 1-inch pins that I do that are about the size of a quarter, I've ordered parts 5,000 at a time and I've had to reorder 3 times now.
Nice. And do you do all sizes? Bigger than?
It's like an obsession. It's like I've never been a collector because I don't really like clutter and I don't like junk. But the second that I started making buttons, it was like you get one button making press and you're like, I need another one. I need another size because then I could do this other size and it would be so different and it would be so much more fun. And then you get that one and you're like, I need more. And it's just, I had to cut off a little bit, but I do a ton of different sizes. And
now, do you have a website for the button making exclusively
really.
Or just again, contact you probably through Facebook or email or?
I've been casually working on a site here and there, but it's not really ready to go.
And do you sell any buttons? Do you make anything? I know a lot of those button makers will put them on eBay or Etsy or something like that.
Yeah, I looked into that. The main thing is that it costs more to ship them than you'd sell them for. Because of the way that our postal system works, you can't, even though they're very insignificant, you can't drop them in an envelope and put a 43-cent stamp in them because all of our mail's, machine sorted and it can jam and clog the machines and cause a lot of problems. And so people that sell patches, people that sell buttons, people that sell badges, people that sell anything that's thick like that, especially if it's, metal, even though it's light, have to send it in a padded envelope. And
it's like the rules. That's the post office.
Rules.
Really. And how do you find out about these rules? What if I wanted to start mailing buttons out and I didn't know that? Would they just come back to me?
A lot of things could happen. Your mail typically, if you're mailing things wrong, they start charging extra for it on the recipient's end.
And then they get pissed off at you and say,
they
I
get
had
pissed
to
off
pay
at
an
you.
extra $1.
And then you start Googling things and you find out. And eBay's communities seem to be a really good resource for anything shipping related.
Well, plus then it costs, you have to pay an extra to list it on eBay. You got to pay a $1 or $2.
Yeah, I was doing it for a while, and I was making like, because every once in a while, I just decide I want to do something really different. And, okay, I've done designs for 20 bands and my own band, and I've done website stuff, and I've done this, and I've flyers and posters, and I'm kind of stuck in this rut, and I love it. But I've got to do something really different. And so I came up with a pin design that was like for a baby shower. And I mean, 2 tones of pink and like, it's a girl. And these would be pins that you give out at the baby shower.
Somebody came to you for this or this was just an idea of yours?
This was just an idea that I came up with. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I did these and I started selling them and they were selling really well. But the problem is that, on the one hand, I thought it was really funny because the last thing that you'd expect is, this nerdy Vespa riding, like bearded dude to be the person that designed this really cutesy, girly, pretty thing.
Well, nobody needs to know what you look like.
But that was the whole reason that, it was funny to me.
Yeah.
But it's just, it got to the point where like, it's really expensive to ship. And then I had like one really bad interaction. Where
with like an angry mother or what?
Where with like somebody that had ordered them and they didn't get delivered, they got lost in the mail and they didn't email me about it. They just sat and festered for like 2 months. And then finally they received them and wrote me this like page-long hate letter about, you ruined my child's birth because my buttons didn't show up. And they were supposed to be here for the baby shower and so that I could hand them out at the hospital and they weren't here and going on and on. And I take feedback so personally.
You're still living with guilt with that one.
I hate it.
Yeah.
And because it was just like, that's the thing is I really, really genuinely care about people. And even though when I really sit down and analyze it, I feel like it was a little bit weird,
And they probably, these people obviously didn't live in Utah.
They didn't live in Utah. They lived in,
some other state.
Somewhere.
And you'll never run into them, but you still carry
Let's
this
just say
guilt.
the breadbasket. So I'm sorry if you live in the breadbasket.
They're listeners of the podcast. They will.
Well, none of the listeners would be the kind of person that would live in the breadbasket and then buy buttons and then write me a hate letter. But this person did. So anyways, I take feedback so personally because I just,
Still to this day you do?
Yeah, even though it started out as a joke, I cared about it still. Like it was still just, even it was something that, and so, you have a history of selling stuff on eBay.
Yeah.
And I did that for a while full time and I stopped for a long time because same thing. That one negative feedback comes and you're like, my whole career is ruined. Everybody's going to judge everything on that one negative feedback. Yeah. And it brought back some of those negative feelings, and I couldn't move on. It just was like, you know what? The $2 that I made off of this or $6 or whatever is not worth this ruining my day. Like ever. There's so many more zeros that need to go before that, after that, for me to even care. But I look at those kind of things just as with the same priority and the same importance as when I'm doing a 6-month long development project.
Well, you take a lot of pride in what you do.
Absolutely.
And so people can learn a lot from that and say, I think that's the problem. I even see that in my own day-to-day life where it's like, I don't take enough pride in what I do. And I think if we all took a little more pride in what we did, we'd all be a lot more successful. And I could tell that by, with everything you're doing, you're pretty successful at what you do. I mean, it comes across at least.
Well, thank you.
With the band and with the button making and your graphic design and all of that. Let's actually talk, before I forget to bring it up. Folk Hogan, you guys just finished. Did you guys completely record the new album then?
We are right in the middle.
Right now. Because I want to talk about if that's cool to talk about that. I want to talk about that before we get too far into it and then we run out of time and don't have a chance to talk. Because that sounds like it's pretty intense to record. Yes. I mean, I know because we were this interview was actually we've had to reschedule a couple times because of that recording.
Yeah,
and which I don't perfectly fine.
Yeah,
but it's like all nighters and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh!
Explain the process. I've never been part of a process like that.
So with our type of band, we've got an accordion, a banjo, a mandolin, and a guitar, and a drum set, and so we've kind of got this like folk punk vibe going on. It's like if you took a bunch of folk instruments, like the stuff that your parents used to listen to, and you made, a modern punk band out of it. That's what we are. And so it presents its own challenges because, a banjo was never meant to plug into an amp and get cranked up like an electric guitar was. It was meant to be an acoustic instrument, that you play in the backwoods of like your creepy swamp area.
Exactly. Yeah. So do you have to modify a banjo then to do this, or can you buy them now?
No. And so Moses that you've interviewed for the podcast that has the guitar shop was able to like pull a special favor from one of his friends and say, hey, you build guitar pickups. What if you built a banjo pickup for me? And they're like, well, is that even possible? That sounds awesome, but is that possible? And Moses is like, yeah, I think if you did this and this and you made one of these, then it would work and I could install it here. And they started talking shop and wheels started turning and they built this banjo pickup, this prototype, and they threw it in a banjo and it sounded awesome, and they made some tweaks to it. And now they're on like the third one that they've built. But, stuff like that for live makes a big difference. But even in the recording studio, I mean, trying to mic up an accordion that, squeezes back, like squeeze box, other name, squeezes back and forth and is in constant motion. I mean, you kind of have to put like a mic over here and a mic over here and one over here and one over here. And,
it's a pretty intense process.
You gotta think of different ways to get different sounds out of it. And, at one point they had him mic'd up with a couple mics here, and then they had one side going out to an old guitar amp and one side going out to like a giant speaker and just to get different sounds and tones. But anyways, the album that we're recording right now, we've been to the studio one time before and we chose the same studio again, Salt Lake Recording Service. And if you're a musician or, know a musician that is looking for a great place to record, I cannot recommend highly enough Brad's recording studio, Salt Lake Recording Service. And I know that they have a Facebook page or whatever, and I'll get you the link for that, and we can put that in the notes too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that place is just perfect for what we were looking for. And there's a lot of great.
And you recorded the previous album there as well.
Exactly.
Now, how many albums has Folk Hogan just
the one? So this will be our second album. Be our second album that's full length. And I guess we did do a demo in the beginning, and it was very, I wouldn't consider it an album as much as just a demo. It was almost,
just something to get your music out there.
Yeah. It was a little bit better than throwing a microphone in your basement, recording your band and it's crackly, but it was a little bit better quality, but not like CD quality or anything like that.
And was it on an actual cassette tape or was it on a CD?
Yeah, it was recorded on reel-to-reel, on like a 70s Tascam reel-to-reel setup. And we could only do a certain amount of songs because we only had a certain amount of tapes. You could only fit 2 or 3 songs per reel. And, it was very vintage equipment and we had some trouble in the middle of the recording. Both of the companies that still produced the tape had gone out of business. And so we had to like go find some on eBay, and it was kind of more of a interesting, project than a really good quality recording.
You probably learned a lot,
but it was good pre-production for the actual album. And so we went through and we recorded at SLRS, and then we passed it off to Matt Weiniger, and he was a Salt Lake resident, and he just moved to Southern California recently, but he had done a couple of the Primus albums.
Oh, nice.
And he had done...
so he had some experience with music.
And they had a lot of accordion on one of the albums that he had recorded. They had it in different parts, and he had, he'd worked with so many of our heroes, and a lot of really awesome local bands. And so that was a good choice at the time. But then when this record came around, we were like focused on having Brad record it and mix it, and then taking it to the final place to master it and make it ready for a CD. And for those that haven't gone through that process before, you go through and you track everything and you think about it. This is the guitar, and I'm going to record guitar for the whole album. You think about it per instrument, and then you go through. And this isn't necessarily the only way to make an album. There are more ways to make an album than there are bands, because not every solution is perfect, but this is the way that we've thought of it. And then, for mixing, they'd actually look at things as a whole song. Okay, what needs to be retracked? What sounds good here? What sounds good there? Do we want to put chains in this right here? Do we want to put somebody playing a saw? What do we want to do to spice this up? And
so you had some really obscure sounds.
Definitely, like trying to keep it interesting and fun. And
what's the most obscure sound that you in this new album?
Oh, well, we have not recorded any of that yet.
Okay. So, or don't you want to probably give it away?
No, I'll totally give it away. That's the fun of it. I mean, because we don't know. We don't know what's going to make the cut. We don't know what's going to end up on the floor or not. I mean, the saw and the chains made it on the last album. That's why I use it as an example. I mean, we even recorded somebody stomping giant work boots for a certain part that we wanted stomping going on in the background. And sure, you can be a jerk and pull out a MIDI keyboard and just sample the stuff, but we really like to capture it. And that's part of
more real.
That's part of more real. And it's a lot easier to just capture it. And that makes sense for a certain type of production. But we've actually got a couple of orchestra drums, like timpanis, and we are looking at putting a little bit of vibraphone and a little bit of random orchestra instruments here and there. Not a lot, but just at very specific places to give things a different feel.
So when you do that in a CD, is it harder to, like, when you play live then? I mean, you can't obviously have all of those sounds.
Of course not.
And all of that stuff.
Not.
So.
And we won't. And, some bands start doing that, and then they start playing to, some sort of pre-recorded thing, or they have really weird instruments on stage. I mean, there's already 6 of us, so we're not really going to have we're not going to have a chain player that comes to every gig and plays that 10-second spot.
I was looking to be your chain player.
You're in.
All right.
What is your 10 o'clock look like? So, but it makes an album, pretty interesting.
I could imagine. So when you recorded part of it already, when are you looking to go back and finish it up then?
Yeah. So I never answered your question, actually.
No. So we're all over the place.
We've been working on this album at Salt Lake Recording Service, and we're tracking enough music for a full album right now and a single that will come out at a later date. And, so it's a very lofty, like really huge goal. And we've gone through all of the drums at this point. We've gone through all of the mandolin at this point. We've gone through all of the bass and half of the accordion, half of the banjo, and most of the guitar. But there'll be a full day of each of those last 3, and there'll be a few days of this and that, and then we'll start looking at it on a song level and mixing it. And when this is all said and done, we're shooting for April for this whole thing
to have it come out.
Yeah.
So have you had to take time off of work and everything to go in and do all of this? Or
yes, some of us have, and we've been, not everybody has to be there at the same time. We do at the beginning, but when we start tracking, just individual parts and one thing at a time, typically the way that we record is we all get in a room and record what's called the scratch tracks. And that's recorded. And then once those are to a point where they look good and they sound good, then we start tracking one instrument at a time until eventually we can throw that scratch track away.
And are all the members there? I mean, are you guys all doing it together, or is it kind of like, okay, Moses can come in this day, Nick can come in this day, Jared can come in this day?
Pretty much all of us are there for the first part, and then we start doing a little bit of that. Then there's always one of us that has to work. We all work full time, but for the most part, we've been, working during the day and recording all night, and have just kept this really strenuous schedule, and we've even been playing gigs during this time too.
Well, yeah, and we'll get into, I mean, I want to definitely hear in a couple of minutes talk about some of your upcoming shows that you're going to be playing. But, I mean, how do you stay sane? How do you guys not kill each other? Or do you kill each other imaginary, in an imaginary world? You're just like, you're dead to me. I mean, you guys all seem to get along pretty good.
I think that we do get fed up with each other at times. And it all comes out as humor, and we give each other a really hard time, and we're always messing around with each other, but for the most part, we spend so much time together. We're all friends.
Do you ever say, listen, I need to take a week away from you, and say, you can't text me, you can't call me? Or I mean, are you on like a daily message with each other or what?
I think that we wish we could sometimes. I'm sure all of us wish that we could, but there's no way to. We can't. We're all just, I think to be a musician doing what we're doing, you have to be a little bit crazy, or maybe a lot crazy, but you definitely have to be, it's like a drug that you're addicted to. And that's not a very good comparison. But there's just part of us that have to do this to exist.
Well, it's what you know.
It's what you know, and it's what you do. It's like some people just wake up in the morning and they have to get on their bicycle and ride it. And if they don't ride it, then their day is just not right, and we've surrounded ourselves in music and playing shows and recording and performing and doing these little short tours when we can. And it's not always convenient, and we've had personal relationships that have suffered, and we've had jobs that have suffered, and, our finances have suffered, but we just, when it comes right down to it, we really, really love making music.
Well, and it's a great band. I mean, you guys have great music, and I'm not just saying that with you here. I mean,
thank you.
You're probably one of my all-time favorite Salt Lake City bands. And again, I'm not just saying that because you're here. I mean, you guys really, some bands can't play well together, but you guys do it. And I mean, great live shows, great recordings, really good. Let's actually talk about some, I mean, I know you're going to be playing, Friday. This won't be up before then, but what are some shows that you're going to be doing after that? So
for the Park City area, we play February 15th at Flanagan's.
Have you played there before?
Yes.
It's a pretty cool place. I don't go to Park City.
It's kind of I mean, if you live in Salt Lake, you tend to stay in Salt Lake a little bit more. And if you're in Park City, you're in Park City. And we tend to play these different regions. And we definitely have friends that will travel all around and watch us. And, that's awesome. What do you call your groupies? Like Hoganites or something, That would be great. I don't know. I don't think that we have just fans. I don't think that we really have
they camp out before your shows. And
for a while we were trying to come up with some name for the wives and girlfriends of the band members, and we were calling them Folkettes, but it just didn't really ever stick.
Yeah.
It sounds too much. You know what I think? It sounds too much like Raisinets.
Your wives and girlfriends are tolerators.
Yeah,
they tolerate what you do.
And and it just sounds like something that you would get going into a movie theater at an inflated price to eat with Sour Patch Kids. Because those are delicious.
So anyways, you're playing. We keep, squirrel here, I mean, anyway, so you're playing in Park City on say the date again, the 15th?
The 15th at Flanagan's in Park City.
February 15th. And then
we've got a show up in Jerome, Idaho at the Diamonds Bar with our friends from the American Hitmen they were recently on American Idol, and it's been really fun to watch them kind of go crazy. They were just playing with like Third Eye Blind.
They're a pretty tough band to be playing with you guys.
And I don't agree. I think that we definitely have different crowds, but I think in a way we can lay a heavy set down, and some of our new stuff is kind of metal-ish. I don't know. I mean, if there's a metal kid that just threw his iPod at the wall for me saying that, but it
doesn't sound like Slayer.
But that's okay. It doesn't need to. And I like Slayer, and I like a lot of metal. And we have varied tastes. That's where it comes from. I mean, anyways, back to the show schedule.
Back to the show.
We work well with them, and their fans seem to be really engaged when we play with them. And what it comes down to is that there's not a lot of the people that like our band typically haven't heard a lot of groups that sound like us.
Because there isn't a lot of groups that do sound like you guys.
There isn't a ton. And the ones that are fans of the bands that we do get compared to don't even necessarily get us or like us, you know? I mean, if we get, you know, cause we've been compared to stuff like, Irish punk bands, and we're not. And we've been compared to
like Flogging Molly or
the Dropkick Murphys.
Serious?
And where I understand people have this desire in life to categorize things, and especially music, because it's like, well, but what does it sound like? Okay, you know, and I don't want to be every musician that's like, it doesn't sound like anything that's ever existed, you know, and then they go play, you know, something that sounds like a lot of stuff, but it.
Have you heard anybody ever say, "Oh, this band sounds like Folk Hogan"? Somebody compared a band to sound like.
And they're like, "Have you heard of this band?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
It's like other small, obscure indie bands. I mean, we have a really fun sound and a wide appeal, and we get invited to play, you know, for rowdy bar crowds, and we get invited to play stuff during the day and all ages. And I mean, there's a bunch of little old ladies in Utah County that hire us every year that just love us, you know, and they've all got gray hair. And if you came and saw us play at the Woodshed, you would never ever suspect that, you know, because we kind of pick different songs and
play some like Perry Como covers, like some really like old like Lawrence Welk
that would
stuff,
be great. But we're not quite prepared to do that.
Yeah.
But,
so anyways, after Idaho, because I know you got a lot of shows coming up.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
for Salt Lake City people.
Okay. The next night will be in Heber, and then Salt Lake City, we play March 8th at Gracie's, and it's kind of a pre-St. Patty's Day, like a pre-St. Patty's Day.
Didn't you guys play there last year for St. Patrick's Day, right? Yeah.
And it's like a Guinness sponsored event, and they get a bunch of like kind of rowdy, Irishy, folky bands. And we do definitely draw a huge crowd for
St.
Patrick's Day because of the sound.
And then I know you're going to be playing again at the Green Pig in March.
We'll be playing the Green Pig again in March. We'll be playing the Woodshed in March. So we have some Salt Lake shows coming up, but there's a huge list. The best place to go is just to folkhogan.com, and it's just right there on the front page. Our schedule is always updating. You know, all of those gigs are already booked and solid, and we'll play those, but there'll be more as the months go on. I mean,
well, that's one thing I noticed. Your website is it's up to date. You got everything on there. And if I noticed correctly, I was kind of peeking at it. You can actually even pre-order the new CD.
Yeah.
So you know, kind of help you guys out a little. Did you guys do a Kickstarter or anything, or you didn't do the Kickstarter?
We thought about it, and we kind of argued about it, and we voiced our opinions, and when it came right down to it, it's like whether we wanted to or not. By the time that we got around to like voicing all of our opinions, it was time to get into the studio. We just had to.
Well, you could still do
start
a Kickstarter
going.
if you want.
I'm sure. I think the problem is that we'd rather invest our time into just focusing on the album at this point, and we've got some plans to make some music videos and book some tours, and so it's not the priority. And, you know, I love Kickstarter and it's good for so many things, but, and I'm actually one of the people that's like, we should do a Kickstarter. And other band members are like, no, because then we're just like doing this and what if it doesn't work? And I'm like, well, it would, but I'd spend more time arguing with them about why we should than actually doing the campaign. And so the way that we've handled it is that if you want to pre-order, then do so. And that's great. And we'll do something a little bit special or extra for those people. And, if not, you can just get the album when it comes out. And we're going to make it anyways.
You're going to make it anyways. You can also buy the old album.
Yeah, you can also buy the old album, and CDs are still.
And you got t-shirts.
Awesome. Yeah.
You got the t-shirts on there. You can buy the t-shirts, CDs at the shows.
But yeah, I mean, we still like making music, and that's what we do as a band. So we'll continue to make CDs or whatever as it changes.
What do you want written on your tombstone, Nick, when you die?
Oh, that's a good question. It caught me a little bit off guard. I don't know. Okay, I do. I think I've got it. I may not have a general answer, but if I die in some horrific way, like I'm the guy that falls off the roller coaster, or even if I just like choke on like food at a buffet and I'm like morbidly obese, or like wherever my life takes me, if I die in some really unfortunate accident, I get hit by a beer truck tomorrow, I want my tombstone to say, he would have wanted to die this way. I just think that would be really fitting. And everybody would be, and so that everybody that walked by would be like, oh, that's really, I don't know who that person was, but that sounds really nice. And everybody else would understand that was not the case, and I'd get one last laugh out of them. They'd be like,
I like it.
But he was attacked by one of the animals at the petting zoo, or I wouldn't go to a petting zoo, but you know what, like, I think that's what I want on my tombstone.
I like it. Now, how can people get in touch with you? Can people add you as a friend on Facebook and all that good stuff?
Yeah.
Because, Folk Hogan, go to folkhogan.com. You got all the links for there, and I'll get all those on the show notes. But you personally, let's talk about how people can get in touch with you.
I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. I'm just Nick Passey. And, I'm on a couple of social media things. That's like the best way. You can also email me, nick@folkhogan.com. That's the main email address that I use right now.
So. Yeah, so get in touch with you for some buttons and
whatever,
graphic,
man.
And just to hang out and have a beer.
Yeah.
What's your favorite local beer?
All of the local beers.
All the local beers.
That's one thing I've greatly enjoyed about being up here, is that there are breweries, and that, even though I was drinking a lot of local beer down in Utah County, it's more accessible. I live right around the corner from Epic. Every time I've lived up here, there's been a brewery within a stone's throw. And I think they're a really important part of where, if you do drink, you should drink local, and whatever you buy, you should buy local. I'm definitely on board with that, because, it just helps out our community a lot. But that aside, there are just so many good local beers.
It is hard to pinpoint that exact.
Probably my new favorite, though, is the 4Play Porter. It's from Park City brewer, and I am drawing a blank, but that's my new favorite porter. I like a lot of Epic, and Chernybach is my other. Yeah.
Nice.
No, Chernybach. What am I saying? Baba.
Oh,
Baba.
That one of my favorites. Real nice dark beer. Anyways, I'm gonna end the podcast playing a Folk Hogan song. I'm gonna let you pick it. What song should we?
Let's do March of the Drunkards.
March of the Drunkards.
Yeah.
All right, that's how I will end this episode of the podcast, playing that song. I appreciate you so much, Nick, for coming and sitting down,
awesome,
and chatting, getting to know you. Anything else you want to add to the recording and that we didn't talk about that you might want to promote, or or that we didn't get a chance? I mean, I know we were all over the board with everything.
I know.
You know?
Well, that's just me. I'm the jack of all trades. And so,
No, I love it.
you know, definitely check out the band, and if you end up liking the music, pick an album up, and that really helps, and
it helps the band out in more ways than people realize.
Yeah. I mean,
and I know you can find you on Spotify and stuff like that.
Oh,
but,
yeah, just
but,
listen to it there even. That's great, you know?
Which I find myself listening to it a lot on Spotify. But
as an independent group, that's huge. I don't know. I think the other thing that we hit on that's important is just, even if you don't like the band, or, you know, you don't like whatever, go do something local. Go support somebody, an artist, somebody that makes something, somebody that records a podcast. Support those people, because it means more than you'll ever understand.
You're not buying, like, I posted something on Facebook the other day about you're not buying some CEO's second vacation house or something like that. You know, you're actually supporting that person, putting food on their table.
Yeah, sometimes.
You know,
yeah.
And,
or at least on a minimal level, doing what they love.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And if you love something, tell somebody. Tell,
yeah.
you know, like even with you guys, I'm sure you guys love it when fans come up to you and say,
if you don't, just move on. Don't send them an email.
yeah, I know how much
It just ruins my day.
I'm going to set up some fake Gmail accounts and send you really nasty emails.
I get some of those sometimes.
All right, well,
just the internet.
Thanks so much, Nick, for coming on the show.